Have you ever wondered what truly went into making Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven? This is one of my favorite bands of all time. I began listening to them when I was about 9 years old. I've been listening to them ever since. But this is a different type of video for me. I usually focus on whole albums. This time I want to talk about one great song. I've heard it hundreds of times over the years. I've never gotten tired of it. If it comes on the radio, I'm still going to listen to it. With that being said, let's get into the history. I'm going to talk briefly about the formation of Led Zeppelin, and then I'll move on to the creation of Stairway to Heaven. Let me start at the beginning. Back in the 60s, there was a rock band called the Yardbirds, and one of the members was Jimmy Page. But all of his bandmates left the band, and he was still under contract and had to fulfill a series of live dates. So Jimmy decided to form a new band, which in his mind would be a heavier blues-based band, and also what he would call a supergroup. He then got John Paul Jones to be the bassist and keyboardist. He had previously worked with John Paul Jones in London as a session musician. He was the perfect pick as he was a skilled multi-instrumentalist. Now he needed a vocalist. He originally wanted Terry Reid, but he declined this invitation, so he found Robert Plant. He was a singer with a powerful voice, and he was able to belt out these high-pitched wails. Now they need a drummer, so Robert Plant recommended a former bandmate that played with him in a band called Band of Joy. He was John Bonham. So now they have this new band. The original name was not Led Zeppelin. It was actually the New Yardbirds, and they had to do this to fulfill their contractual obligations, but they later changed it to Led Zeppelin after Keith Moon and John Entwistle of The Who made a joke that the band would go down like a lead balloon. So they kind of adapted the spelling a little bit and called it Led Zeppelin. Afterwards, they got a record deal with Atlantic thanks to their record producer, Peter Grant. Now we know the origin of the band. Let's fast forward a little bit. The band had already released 3 studio albums, and they're working on their 4th album. Jimmy Page came up with the idea, which would become Stairway to Heaven. He wanted to create this long, multi-layered, evolving piece of music. He wanted to create this composition that would constantly build in intensity and emotional depth. It would be unlike traditional rock songs that often had more of a uniform structure. He had been thinking about creating this type of song for some time now. He wanted to have a composition that would unravel in layers and accelerate as it progressed. He also wanted to incorporate different musical sections that would seamlessly flow into each other and would culminate into this powerful climax. A big part of the song's initial musical blueprint, specifically the iconic acoustic guitar intro, came about in 1970 when Jimmy Page and Robert Plant went to Brony-R, which was a remote cottage in Wales. The band was taking a break after an intense touring schedule. This rest period gave them a lot of time for creative exploration. Jimmy Page described working on the opening acoustic chords there. He often kept a cassette recorder around to record musical ideas as they came to him, and Stairway came together from bits of these recorded snippets. Jimmy Page has often spoken of a classical influence on the song's structure. He wanted the song to constantly move and evolve like a symphony. He had the fanfare section, which is where the 12 strings come in, and the chord progressions for the guitar solo, and the final heavy section already worked out in his mind. Once Jimmy Page had this musical mind map in his head, he mapped it out on paper and brought it to John Paul Jones, who was the band's arranger, as well as a skilled multi-instrumentalist. John Paul Jones was really crucial in translating Page's vision into this cohesive musical framework. They worked many hours together on the song. John Paul Jones played the electric piano and the recorded parts for the opening melody. The early instrumental collaboration solidified the song's unique progression. While Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were planning out the music, Robert Plant was spending a lot of time sitting by a fire. According to Robert Plant, he said the lyrics for Stairway to Heaven seemed to flow out of him almost spontaneously. Once he heard the evolving musical structure, he began to connect with it lyrically. The opening line, "There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold," and She's Buying a Stairway to Heaven reportedly came to him quickly. Robert Plant often drew inspiration from mythology, wealth, and Celtic folklore and literature, as well as J.R.R. Tolkien. So as you can see, this was a group effort that all started by an idea that Jimmy Page had. The recording sessions for Stairway to Heaven included lots of meticulous planning and spontaneous breakthroughs. The song was a reflection of the band's creative synergy and Jimmy Page's vision as a producer. One of the major factors in the success of the recording process was the recording location. The band decided to record at Headley Grange, which was a remote old Victorian mansion in Hampshire, England. It was an unconventional setting. It didn't have the sterile environment of a traditional studio, but it gave them a relaxed and experimental atmosphere. The band could live and work together. This allowed for ideas to flow freely and spontaneously. This location had the perfect vibe for creating this masterpiece. They also had something else to help them with the sound they wanted. It was the Rolling Stones mobile studio, which was a truck that was converted into a studio that was packed with recording equipment. They parked it outside the mansion. This gave them some natural acoustics and reverb. It was very beneficial for the sound of John Bonham's drums. The biggest breakthrough was how the band was able to bring Jimmy Page's vision for a constantly building multi-section song to life. The recording of Stairway to Heaven perfectly captures the song's famous dynamic shifts, from the delicate acoustic opening through the addition of John Paul Jones's recorders and electric piano, to the mid-tempo electric phase, and finally the explosive hard rock climax with John Bonham's drums and Jimmy Page's solo. This was not a simple verse-chorus structure, but a carefully orchestrated journey. Jimmy Page's genius as a producer shines through in the layering of guitars. He played the initial 6-string acoustic, then added a 12-string electric, which was a Fender Electric XXI, for the fuller, more ethereal middle section. This layer technique was crucial for building the song's sonic density. Then there were Robert Plant's vocals. While Robert Plant had much of the lyrics ready, his performance on Stairway is a testament to his vocal abilities. He adapts his delivery to each section of the song, from the soft, almost whispered tones in the opening to the powerful, unrestrained wail in the final section of the song. This was a significant vocal breakthrough for him that showed his range and emotional depth. Then there was the work of John Paul Jones. He played the subtle but effective bass line in the iconic recorded melody in the intro. This specific touch added a timeless, almost medieval quality that immediately sets the song apart. Then there was John Bonham's delayed entrance. One of the most effective breakthroughs was the decision to hold back John Bonham's drums until well into the song, which come in around the 4 minutes and 18-second mark. This deliberate restraint creates immense anticipation. When Bonham finally comes in with his powerful yet controlled drumming, the impact is immense, instantly signaling the song's shift to a harder rock sound. This was a conscious decision to maximize the dynamic contrast. Finally, one of the most iconic moments of the song was the guitar solo. Jimmy Page's guitar solo was played on a 1959 Fender Telecaster that was given to him by Jeff Beck. This guitar solo is considered to be one of the rock's greatest of all time. But here's something interesting. Jimmy Page said that he winged it. He recorded 3 improvised solos before settling on the final one. This was an example of Jimmy Page's ability to create spontaneous brilliance. The spontaneity was combined with his meticulous approach to tone and layering, which in the end gave us one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. But not everything was smooth sailing. Apparently, John Bonham initially struggled with the timing on the 12-string part right before the solo. Jimmy Page said that for some unknown reason, Bonzo couldn't get the timing right on the 12-string part before the solo. Other than that, it flowed very quickly. But this was just a minor inconvenience as John Bonham was able to work it out. Then there was also some problems with the mixing. There was an initial mix of Led Zeppelin 4 done in Los Angeles at Sunset Sound by engineer Andy Johns and Jimmy Page. However, when they brought these mixes back to London, they found they were flat and lacked the dynamics they've achieved. Jimmy Page felt something might have happened to the tapes or the mix wasn't quite right. This led for a decision to remix the album, which Jimmy Page took the liberty to do himself. This remixing process ultimately led to the powerful and balanced final sound heard on the album. Now it's time to release the album Led Zeppelin 4, as is commonly known, although technically it's an untitled album. The album was released on November 8th, 1971. What's interesting about Stairway to Heaven was that it was never released as a commercial single. This decision was made by the band and manager Peter Grant because they wanted to reinforce the idea that Led Zeppelin was an album band and that the song was meant to be experienced within the context of the entire album. Even without a single release, Stairway to Heaven quickly became the most requested song on FM radio stations across the United States. This was a pivotal time for FM radio, which was shifting from playing pop singles to more album-oriented format. This allowed for longer, more complex tracks to gain airplay. Stairway to Heaven was the perfect song for this new radio format. Zeppelin played the song for the first time live in Belfast in March of 1971, which was a few months before the album's release. Initial reactions were varied. For example, John Paul Jones said that the crowd was bored to tears, wanting to hear something they knew, which was during the first performance, but over time it became the climax and centerpiece of every subsequent Led Zeppelin concert. The live version of the song often went beyond its 8-minute studio version, with Jimmy Page delivering extended solos and Robert Plant adding improvisational vocals. And that is the story of the legendary song. If you want to hear more about the recording process for Led Zeppelin 4, check out this video I did right here back when it was celebrating its 50th anniversary. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.